Hello, everyone. How are you doing? And welcome to another episode of the Dr. Will Show, where we have the discussions that inform, entertain, and empower educators to be the change. I am your host, Dr. Will, and I am here with Brady Venables. How are you doing, Brady?
I'm doing great, Dr. Will. Thanks for having me on the show.
Well, thank you for being a guest on the show. My phone was ringing right there. I wanted to have you on in particular because you and I have had previous discussions about uh, the role of technology, and you and Dr. Sean have this blog, "Don't Be a Tool," and I've also had previous discussions with, of course, with his podcast and with certain things that we've been my experiences as of late in my own school. I decided, okay, let me revisit this with you. So thanks again for being a guest on the show. The topic today, people, is the innovation train has left the station. So for those who are watching, will you please introduce yourself?
Oh, is that for me? Sorry.
Yes.
I zoned out. For some reason, I thought that we had live people coming in to talk. Live viewers. And I was like, where are the people? So this is where I lose credibility as a technology specialist. So I go through that quite a lot. I'm Brady, and like you mentioned, I do write a blog that has a series on it called Don't Be a Tool. The blog in and of itself is called Classroom Confessional, where my partner, my accountability partner, and I go through our confessions and talk about where we may have screwed up and try to allow other teachers to see through the fact that a lot of district leaders, and Sean works at the state level, we're no better than anybody else and we make mistakes. And the best thing we can do is confess what happened to us and provide an opportunity to fail forward and tell our story. So that's what we try to do on the blog. And then within that, we have a series called Don't Be a Tool. And that kind of arose out of the fact that in my position, I'm a technology integration specialist, and I'm often having conversations where people are looking for a tool to integrate into their classroom, and I'm kind of resisting and trying to make sure that the choices that they make are pedagogically sound and are made for the right choice and not for just the sake of technology. So that's where we started with Don't Be a Tool.
Awesome. For me, I like a tool. Are you hearing the echo? Because I am.
No.
Okay. Hopefully it's not on the broadcast, but I like a good tool. Now, I'm not out there, selling tools on the corner with my teachers. I'm not in the hallway like, hey, I got this for you. I got this for you. But I definitely see the advantages of these tools. And I agree that teachers need to start with their why, and they need to look at student outcomes and then pick sort of the best tool to fit. Mm-hmm. But I also know that we are in an era, not entering an era, but we are in an era where things are changing very rapidly, not only in education, but outside of education as well. And what has alarmed me the most is at the snail's pace that education has evolved with the changing pace of what is happening outside of education. You just, before we came on, you told me about introducing a number of new teachers in your school district. Mm-hmm. So as we are now talking about innovation and what does a modern classroom look like and how we push our students forward and allow them to have certain experiences, but also for their education to keep pace with what is happening outside of education, where do you see teachers actually coming into the profession, and what are some of the roadblocks have you seen with trying to move them forward?
I recently was thinking about a roadblock after hearing a fabulous keynote at the Building Learning Communities Conference, which is the conference run by Alan November up in Boston. And he had a keynote by a man named Robert Evans. And he wrote a book quite a few years ago, I think probably in the late 90s, called The Human Side of School Change. And he had an interesting perspective because he mentioned how the whole concept of teaching is kind of a whole career that is built upon the past. So we all go into the field and then teach what we know, which is old knowledge, and we try to instill that onto our students. So we're kind of in a backwards facing career. A lot of times we are inspired by a teacher who, by the time we get into our own classroom, that teaching experience may have been 10 years previously, so we're inspired by a figure of the past. We're teaching content knowledge that we learned in the past. And so the whole profession itself is looking backwards and not looking forward. And that may be one of the reasons why, as you mentioned, the world around us seems to be moving forward, but for some reason education is always staying the same. And that just could be because of the setup of it. It is the kind of thing where it's built upon looking backwards. And that's one of the biggest roadblocks. When you ask people to change, you're asking them to adopt something new, but also to give up something old. And that's the hardest part with the innovation. When you want them to change and adopt something new, there's a grieving process. They have to go through that process of realizing why their old habits aren't as wonderful as they may have thought they were.
And I hear what you're saying, but what I find to be interesting is no one is grieving the loss of Blockbuster, right? They love Netflix. No one is grieving the VCR. We love the DVR. When you are asking a teacher, hey, let's not make 1,000 copies a week. Because your students can show greater ownership and evidence of their learning via projects or podcasts, blog posts, any number of things that I think would be more not only engaging for them, but for you as a teacher,
right?
I would assume would be something that would be refreshing for yourself. You know, yet we are not seeing that. And I hear what you're saying about, okay, I got to let this go, particularly if this is what I'm just trying to figure out from the work that I've been doing. How do I get teachers to be okay with letting that go? I mean, I'm at a loss.
You know, I think a part of it is for people where this ed tech thing comes naturally. It comes naturally to us. It comes naturally. We see in our head what could be. Like, you know, you can see exactly, like you could write lesson plans like that for how the digital portfolio would go out. You know, that just comes naturally. I think it's a little bit of a vision problem. Because we so often teach how we were taught, it's very hard for a teacher to imagine not giving the book report they've always given because they just can't picture that vision of a blog post that's updated weekly or a Twitter back channel chat. It's just, they know intellectually, but the vision isn't strong enough. And so that's where in our district and in my experience in my past district, site visits were so important. We had to get our teachers out of our building and take them to another location where they could see the vision in action, because they need to see the data for themselves. Telling someone what it's like isn't nearly as powerful as and seeing it happen and constructing that vision in their mind themselves.
So I also want to touch on, let's say, test scores, which K through 12 education, particularly Title I, those schools are run ragged by the tail by test scores. No one wants to get their school taken over by the state. No one wants to get that letter, F grade or what have you. Where do you see leadership's role in creating that environment where innovation is expected, encouraged, championed, and quite honestly, where leadership tells teachers, hey, your first year in a one-to-one, or if we're transitioning to a one-to-one, our test scores, hey, we may take a dip this first year or two because this is so new, and that we are trying out new curriculum and new resources and new teaching methodologies. And it's okay because we know that we have a greater mission at hand. So what do you see leadership in leading the charge in that innovation?
Well, I do want to make one comment that if you're one of those schools that gets to be taken over by Sean Clark, those schools might be jumping for joy. So that's her role. She goes into those schools that get marked as at risk and a priority school by the state, and they receive a massive amount of support. But it certainly is a ding on the reputation of the school. And I totally get the test score stress and emphasis. When I was in the classroom, all of the courses I taught culminated in a state assessment. So I wasn't at the privilege of being able to teach a content and experiment with innovation and technology and then not be assessed. My content, which was science, high school science, was assessed every year. And I think you're right there on the money when you say it's a leadership issue. When the leadership allows a teacher to be innovative, the teacher will be innovative. And when the leadership doesn't allow that innovation and doesn't allow space for experimentation and reflection, teachers clamp down and they won't take a risk. I was so lucky to have a principal that let me take risks and supported me when I failed. In my current district, what we do to help the leaders see the vision is that we actually provide monthly PD for the principals in the district called Digital Leadership, where we try to give the leaders strategies and understanding for how technology integration works, how there may be an initial dip before the rise, how to support teachers through that process. We know that we can't expect the principals to just automatically know how to create an environment of innovation. So that's why we do spend time providing them professional development for what that looks like and what that feels like, which we're very lucky to have that opportunity.
Nice. I like that, but I don't know how many. I mean, you're lucky that your principals are receptive and then are actually, taking advantage, of this. Some principals, they don't.
Right.
Because they actually still see education being one way and their role being one way.
I think that there's a lot of pressure on principals, and that pressure definitely just trickles down to the teachers. And so when the principals hear in their district meetings about an emphasis on test scores, then that message is echoed and even echoed louder and magnified when you get back down to the teacher level. And then, the districts aren't the problem. The State Department pushes the districts to become better as measured by test scores. It's a challenge that I don't think we will ever escape, but I don't think it's a challenge that should be used as an excuse. We see teachers all over doing great things within the constraints of classes that culminate in high stakes testing. And it's just that those teachers take a risk, they learn from it, and they recover. You cannot change unless you're uncomfortable. So you're not going to be able to change the way education works unless it's bothersome and uncomfortable. It's just not going to happen. We can look at our students in the classroom, and teachers know the students aren't happy. We're on the cusp of something big. We just need to push our field over the edge. And that's why it takes people like you, Dr. Will, talking about it, spreading the word, inspiring people, so that we can get enough momentum towards the edge of that cliff and we'll all fly together.
Well, excellent, excellent. Thank you. Give me too much credit. But what's interesting to me, and what I don't want to see happen to public education, is what happened to Blockbuster. And I know many people don't really think about Blockbuster and
Mhm.
how it no longer exists. Like this bad boy is gone. And
Mhm.
Blockbuster used to be the joint.
I
When
remember.
I'm 43, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is Friday, man, or it's time to go make this a Blockbuster night. This was hot,
Mhm.
and now it's gone, and they are gone part of their own fault because, and I don't know how many people know this, but the founder of Netflix actually went to Blockbuster and said, let's partner on this thing. I got this idea because he knew Blockbuster was the giant. And
Mhm.
Blockbuster said, nah, we got it. We're Blockbuster. And look where they are now.
Right.
And I don't know if that'll ever happen to public education.
But here's the thing. Isn't Netflix better than Blockbuster?
Yes.
Okay, so you say you don't want the Blockbuster thing to happen to education, but Blockbuster failed and we got something better. So what if this whole thing crumbles and then we get something better? We can't hold on to something that we know isn't right.
That will be awesome. That will be awesome. That will be awesome. I'm just, and bringing that up, my thought process is people had to be not, well, first of all, a lot of people lost their jobs and careers over this, but I'm
Mhm.
just thinking in terms of for people who are currently teaching and currently leading schools,
Mhm.
are they going to be the ones that create, quote unquote, the next flicks of public education, or are they going to be passe? Will the innovation crush them to the point where they are no longer relevant?
Right. And that's an interesting thought. I ran across a quote recently and I wrote a blog post about it. And it said, the change we are in the middle of is not significant, but it's not over either. So we're in the middle of this huge change and we can't behave like we're victims of this change. We can't act like the change is happening to us. Otherwise, like you said, the old guard of teachers will be out of a job. We are responsible for constructing this change. And that's what I try to get across to the teachers that I support and the technology coaches that I support. We are creating the better education. It's not there for us yet. We're making it. And it's exciting to be a part of the first line. We're not the first followers. We're the leaders. This cohort of teachers, those ones in the classroom doing one-to-one teaching, it's so new in so many districts. They're on the front guard and they have to be impassioned by the fact that they're the ones doing the hard work. The history books are going to be written about what these teachers now did. And so that's why they have to be so inspired to take that risk and figure this out.
Awesome, awesome. So now I want to get to the place that births most of everyone who works in public education, and that is the schools of education and universities. And most of them just do a terrible job preparing the new folk that are coming into the profession.
Yeah.
These people know one-to-one, BYOD. They know it's growing. They know it's all over the place. I'm in Mississippi, and there are one-to-one schools and school districts in my state. And no one ever thinks of innovation when they think of Mississippi. Yet we are moving forward and moving in that direction. But yet the schools of education that prepare these teachers still teach them as though kids are going to sit in desks, in rows. The teacher's going to sit up there and they're going to talk for 45 minutes and they're going to make all those copies.
Mhm.
And I'm just wondering, why? Why aren't they, leading these teachers in another direction so that when they get to the when they get their first job, they move to these environments, that they themselves are not only prepared, but they're prepared to lead and be examples for those who may not be where they are.
Right. I have an experience with this concept recently in two ways. I'm in graduate school now in getting my degree in educational leadership and administration. And that's something that, which is a great field. It's really very interesting. I'm very happy to have chosen that. But I have pushed the program's program director on the fact that they're not talking about leading in a one-to-one environment. They're not talking about digital leadership. They're not modeling digital practices. You know, we all have these devices in the classrooms, and we all of the people, this is a face-to-face cohort of people, are in one-to-one schools, and they have not made a step to try to accommodate that. And it's a huge problem. And I think that comes down to the fact that they teach from what they know. They're sage on the stage, and I think that the public K-12 schools are much more innovative than the higher education. I think that our students are going through K-12, and when they get to higher education, they regress. There's no more collaboration, or it's certainly weaker collaboration, and it's pushing more content with no depth. Recently, Sean Clark was teaching a class on assessment at a local university, and she invited me to be a guest lecturer on digital assessment, obviously, because that's my expertise. And it sort of rocked the students' world that I didn't teach them 15 best digital assessment tools, and that instead I taught them how to evaluate digital assessment tools by telling them that, you know, by the time you get out of preparatory, tools aren't going to exist. My favorite ones. We're going to create a rubric together about what you look for when you're evaluating a tool, and then we're going to practice evaluating a tool, which I thought was much more building capacity for those people than teaching them about Kahoot and Socrative, because those just won't exist 8 years from now. And it blew their mind that my lesson was set up with an unclear answer. And you're exactly right. We can't expect teachers to come out of preparatory programs like this and then enter our schools with this innate knowledge. And I guess that emphasizes the importance of having a digital leader like you and like me and like our technology coaches who can support them, because they have these vast gaps that we can't blame them for, because our local colleges and universities haven't caught up to what we require of them, bare minimum, in the public schools.
Awesome. And that's one of the reasons why I am looking forward to becoming a professor or leading the best job. People who are watching this show one day, if you got one, you know, holler at your boy. But Dr. Katie Martin, do you know her on Twitter?
Oh, I know her personally.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
I love
you know,
Katie Martin.
And you know, she recently transitioned to a new space. Awesome. But even her previous job in terms of working with a university at this institute.
Yeah.
And their job is to move districts forward in making that digital transition.
Right.
That's something that I want to do, that and teach, because I want to bring my experiences in K-12 environment, as well as my just thinking, because I'm not bound by boundaries, I guess. I don't walk into a classroom and go, well, it's always been this way. Mm-hmm. For me, I know that if it can be done better, we can do it better, and we should do it better.
Right.
I know from having friends who teach at the college level, and they complain how students don't know how to use a Google Doc, or they can't do this, they can't do that. And let's be people. Tell your children their professors teach content. They're not going to teach other stuff. So if they tell you, hey, I want your paper turned in via Google Doc, they're not going to teach them how to do a Google Doc.
Right.
And that's where I want to go, because I'm hoping that if I can get them there before they get to the school, that maybe I will make some sort of headway. and a greater contribution with the work that way.
Right. Sometimes I wonder, and I don't know for sure, and this is certainly just a thought experiment that I've had, but I wonder if we need to raise the bar and have higher expectations for the teachers. I think the teachers are much more capable than we give them credit for. We kind of create this relationship, like before they use something, they need to receive training on it. And so they're hesitant to adopt a new technology until they get their training, which to me just is crazy, because no one gets training on their Amazon Alexa, and those are in houses all over, and no one gets training on their Garmin GPS or their iPhone. But for some reason, when we get to school, they wait for training, and we can only provide so much training. And so I like to have a better expectation for teachers. You don't need a training on Google Documents. You know where training is? It's on YouTube. So if we recommend Google Docs to you, go after it. You know, be a go-getter. You can find it on YouTube. You're a smart person. Our teachers are smart people. We don't need to provide them so many scaffolds that they become handicapped, you know? And that's something that I've really been pushing on and trying to get people to think about. And I don't know the answer. And I know that to ask teachers to go out and learn something on their own is to ask them to learn it on their own time, which is a dangerous statement. But I don't see why teachers can go after that learning in their planning period and not wait on the technology specialist. There's a wide variety of paces that teachers work at, and one technology specialist in a school or a district can't meet every teacher where they are every single day. So I encourage teachers, you know, you can be on Twitter just as much as I can be on Twitter, and you can be on YouTube just as much as I can be on YouTube, and it would make my day for me to walk into your classroom and see you doing something that I have no idea about.
Awesome, awesome. Yes, my general, I called her today, and she said, "Oh, I found out how to do this," and I found out on Twitter. And I said, "Go ahead." And I'm glad you brought that up, because I am in a state that is very non-connected. I go to conferences, and they do a little tweeting. But it's not serious.
Mm-hmm.
And we get so caught up. Oh, I'm hearing a bad echo. I hope it's not in the recording.
I don't hear it.
We get so caught up. I think of ourselves who are on Twitter, and we love Twitter so much that we forget that most people aren't on Twitter.
I know. I talked about that recently. It's like 30% of teachers are on Twitter.
Wow, that's insane.
Yeah.
How do you, with the work that you do, encourage your teachers to actually, you know, build a PLN on Twitter? And what are your thoughts when you go to a conference and you're going there expecting that people will be there learning and connecting? Hey, what's your Twitter handle and back channeling sessions, and they're not doing it.
I can remember a conference presentation I did at a Title I conference here in South Carolina, and almost the whole presentation hinged upon the participants needing to tweet. So we needed them to tweet with a certain hashtag to show them certain tools or certain things. Like, it was a huge part. And, you know, a crowd of 40 people maybe, and 3 people were on Twitter. And I remember just, you know, feeling like my presentation was taking a nosedive, because I built it around this concept that they would be on Twitter, and then they just weren't. And that was disappointing. And we've addressed it in our district. It's not a problem in our district. Day one of teachers' new orientation, they have time to set up a Twitter account. They follow the superintendent. They follow the district. It's a culture in our school. And we can thank George Caros for that. He came to our district quite a few years ago, and he got the word out about Twitter, and we are strong in our district on Twitter. But the thoughts I was having just a few days ago, and I even tweeted about them, which it was probably the wrong place to put my thoughts, was why do we equate professional learning networks with Twitter when we know the majority of teachers aren't on Twitter? So how can we figure out how to connect teachers together and eliminate the Twitter from it? Teachers know about Twitter. President Trump is on Twitter all the time. Everyone knows it exists. They're not getting on it for some reason. So I don't want Twitter to be the reason why people don't professionally network. So what do we need to do to figure out another alternative that's maybe more comfortable, that's maybe safer, that's easier to have these 70% of the teachers that don't get on Twitter have the same kind of networking, get the same value we get? What do you think? So do you think we should push Twitter, or do you think we should say, you know what, maybe Twitter's not the thing?
I like pushing Twitter because when you become connected and that becomes a practice for you, offline, you know how to do it with greater purpose. And to me, that's a greater ease of, I'm just going to talk to a stranger because you get so used to it on Twitter because like you've been to ISTE. And so even though there are people at Twitter, people at ISTE who are still not on Twitter, the Bloggers Cafe is still buzzing because the atmosphere there is, well, let's exchange ideas. You know, who are you? What are you doing in your classroom? What are you doing in your school? I love it. I won't lie to you. When I go to ISTE, there are very select sessions I go to, but I love that Bloggers Cafe.
Well, that's good. I mean, you own your learning. You're directing your learning. I don't think that's a bad confession at all. I'm one of those people where I will go to the session, and if 20 minutes later it's stuff I know, I'm going to let my feet do the talking and I do a walking, because we get limited professional learning opportunities, and sometimes I just got to go where the learning is. And I would hope that those people aren't offended by that. You never know, but I get what you're saying. Twitter has a lot of value. I love how it is fast paced. I love how the networks just grow out like a spider web. I love the constraint of 140 characters that make you get in and get out. Like, you have to know what you're trying to say. That's a valuable skill.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just worry, you know, if the people aren't on Twitter now, are they going to get on Twitter? I don't know.
I don't know that answer either. And I think they have to do something. And here's why I'm an advocate of using social spaces to build your PLN or for professional development. When you are face to face, and there's nothing wrong with that, because I still do it myself, but you're always limited to the knowledge and experiences of the people in your direct sort of inner circle who you see. But whether you're going to Pinterest for stuff, or you're joining Facebook groups or LinkedIn or Twitter, now that network of people, that knowledge that you're learning from is global. And you're able to exchange ideas. Like, you know, you and I are a different state, and we're learning from each other. We're all to be able to discuss what things are alike in our environments and how things are different and such. And that's why I love the power of social, because it extends that network in ways that face-to-face just doesn't cut it.
You're right. And it drives home that point that is, don't say this is impossible when there's people on Twitter that are tweeting about it. And that public sharing of information is so valuable. I can't imagine what it was like, you know, 30 years ago teaching, when there weren't conferences, there weren't Twitter, there weren't huge amounts of magazines, you know. We're at a great advantage. And so I get that we just want so badly for the teachers to take advantage of it. They don't know what they don't know.
Yes. So before we go ahead.
No, I'm good.
Go. What is your call to action, your advice for those teachers who or administrators? They're going to watch this show. And they're going to say, yeah, innovation. Okay, I've heard this from you, Eric Schenniger, Dunn Wittrick, George Couros. I think that this is education. I think we are playing internet games. What do you say to them to begin to have that self-reflection, to see the importance of where we are now?
It's simple. Get your feet in the halls and the floors of those classrooms and talk to the kids. Watch these children in kindergarten and then watch what happens at grade 10. Talk to the kids. Ask them how they feel. Ask them about the differences between school and outside of school. The children will tell you. And we need to give the children much more credit than we traditionally do. We think the children should have no opinion about their education. They're in the spot of the learner, and we do the teaching and we do the education to them. The children will tell you exactly what they need. I've learned so many more lessons from what my students taught me about what the best learning environment was for them than I ever learned from reading a book. Talk to the kids, see the kids as a partner in this passion that we do, and move from there.
Awesome. Thank you again, Brady, for being a guest on the show.
Thank you.
You know how this is going on my blog. And I'm like 4 podcasts behind on my blog, so I got to get on that. This is going to be on SoundCloud. It's on YouTube. Subscribe to my channel. And of course, the Dr. Will Show is now on iTunes, people. So you can check it out there. Thank you again, Brady, for being a guest on the show.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Happy to contribute.
Excellent, people. As always, invest in you, aid in you. Peace.